Mr. Anderson.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mr. Anderson, and I am mean to people on the internet. I'm always very polite about it, though. I just tend to ask difficult questions and insist on the answers. I think maybe that's kind of an occupational hazard because I am, in fact, a lawyer. Now, on my channel, you'll find a lot of stuff to do with debates, debate review, and debate techniques. Basically, my channel is kind of a self defense guide for getting into fights on the internet. And today I have with me a very special guest, a very strong debater in his own right, somebody who you should probably be watching if you want to get better at this sort of thing. This is Grayson from Based Theory. How you doing, Grayson?
Hey, Mr. Anderson, thanks for having me. Congratulations on your channel. It's really taken off and you've been making some great content, especially like meta analyses of the kind of debates that we both get up to. It's really been enjoyable to watch.
Well, that's kinder than I deserve. Thanks, Grayson. And I should probably say to you, I've said this to you before, but I want to say it sort of to the YouTube audience. So Grayson very graciously offered to review one of his debates with me. And I had to like watch a whole bunch of his debates to try and find one where he didn't just like mop the floor with the other guy. Because like, what am I going to offer when it's just like, yeah, man, like, good job. So I finally found one, and it's like, I don't know, like a year ago. And Grayson's like, "How did you find that one? I hate that debate." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, that's the only one that wasn't amazing. So like, that's one we have to review, right?" Um, but he very kindly agreed, nonetheless, to review with me. And so you guys are quite lucky to have somebody who's as humble and willing to take criticism from some Yahoo on the internet as this man is. And I'm lucky to have him as a guest. So once again, Grayson, I really do appreciate your willingness to be here and talk to us about this stuff.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. Yeah, like you said, I mean, I thought we were gonna maybe do an easy one. I've done several debates with Kent Hovind, and that usually goes how Kent Hovind debates go, but it's kind of playing on easy mode. I've had a number of different, debates with creationists or
Oh,
flat earth.
you debated some hard ones, and Ken Hoven's no, he's no pushover. Like you know, the guy, he doesn't know science, but he sure as heck knows how to debate. He sure as
He
heck
knows
knows how
rhetoric.
to. He knows his rhetoric. So like,
Yeah.
he's not an easy opponent by any stretch of the imagination. He's not. A lot of people think of him as kind of like the Glass Joe of like the debate circuit, where it's like, it's everybody gets their start with him, and like, I mean, he's the most famous person that you could get your hands on that will debate anybody. So like, in that sense, he's a great starting point, right? Because like, he can give you a lot of attention, and and you can get a debate with him. But on the other hand, like, he's not an easy opponent, you know.
I suppose, yes, I should clarify that his knowledge of science is
Yeah,
remedial, but his actual ability to articulate in front of an audience and win over people with rhetoric is pretty formidable. I mean, he's done hundreds of these debates over the years, so he does have his bit of a style that he has refined. That is true. But yes,
yeah,
I was surprised that you picked this debate because I was telling you before the show here that this is one of the few debates that I actually regret having, and really left a bad taste in my mouth afterwards. So if there's any debate that we could dissect together and figure out what went wrong, what could have gone better, because and this debate had nothing to do with any amount of substance, any amount of science or fact. It was just the frustrating and the format of this debate that just left me frustrated and exhausted with the whole thing. So I'm sure we'll get into it.
yeah. Well, why don't we, let's stop burying the lead and do exactly that. Um, and so just give me a minute, everybody, to wrestle with technology here.
No
And
worries. While you pull that up, I suppose I'll set up this debate, right? So this is versus Standing for Truth, aka Donnie, which both of us I think got our start debating on the Standing for Truth channel. So it should be no stranger to your audience or mine. And this debate happened because Donnie messaged me after midnight and said, hey, do you want to have an impromptu, informal discussion about the out of Africa concept? And I said, sure. And then he said, okay, let's start it around 1 a.m. And I'm thinking, okay, okay. And then it ended up starting about an hour late. So it's almost 2 a.m. by the time we even start having this discussion. So my big takeaway that the big lesson that I gleaned from this exchange was never do a debate impromptu after midnight. But I'm sure that there's other lessons that are sure to be gleaned from this. It's just that was the big one that I learned.
That is a good first lesson. Hang on a second. Let's just get through this. Ooh, making money on Amazon. Wow, I definitely have to leave that in. All right, don't worry. We'll cut that out, or maybe not if it's hilarious. We'll see. Oh, YouTube Premium. No, thank you. All right. The first moment that I wanted to touch on happens around here. Hopefully, I've got this queued up to the right moment. We might have to rewind it a little bit. Let's have a look.
And like that's what I was told we were going to be talking about, the out of Africa hypothesis.
Well, this is the out of Africa
discussion. I will bring the papers you want. I will send them to you in advance. We can go over them and we can show the exact mechanisms, and we can go sentence by sentence on the methodology if that's what makes you happy. And we can go through all these things for your audience, and we can show how these deleterious mutations are purged out of the population after experiencing a bottleneck that increases homozygosity with an increasing population that then makes the genome healthy again. We can show that. It's not just one experiment. It's multiple.
No, because we haven't observed models. Well, we have an observed example today. Okay, firstly, you said you read my book and you asked me before we did this, is this the out of Africa argument that you iterated in your book? And the answer is yes. I got a whole chapter on this. This is the main argument because this is out of Africa. And if there's no solution to this problem, dude, the population bottleneck occurred in Africa. And if this population bottleneck's not feasible, then guess what? We didn't come out of.
Okay, so let's go back.
Random mating.
I just want to go back to
go ahead
to that moment where you said a whole bunch of stuff there, and you started talking about, you know, all of the different ways that we can know that, you know, the population like definitely didn't come out of Africa. You know what I'm talking about?
Definitely didn't come out of Africa?
Definitely did rather come out of Africa.
So the main point that I was trying to get at here was that so far we were almost 25 minutes into this discussion here, and we had not gotten to the actual topic that I was told we'd be discussing, which was the out of Africa hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
Donnie wanted to spend the entire time talking about the
bottleneck in Africa.
Genetic bottleneck. Which is not out of Africa.
Right, because that happened in Africa.
Yes, that happened in Africa. It has nothing to do with out of Africa. It's like at a totally different time point as well. And he wanted to focus on the fact that, well, when you have a bottleneck, you have a buildup of deleterious mutations that leads to a homozygous population and goes to decay. Like this is the basic genetic entropy argument. And it's like, at this point, I was confused. I was like, well, this is not the topic that we agreed to discuss. So I said, look, if you wanted to have a debate on that topic, I'd be happy to come back, bring the papers which show genetic bottlenecks and recovery afterwards to a healthy heterozygous population. And I can bring those papers and we can go through them. But that's not the conversation that we agreed to have tonight. That was what I was trying to bring up there.
Right. So, well, I guess there's kind of, you know, two ways to go about it. Like at this point, right, you had, you know, you guys had spent 20 minutes on that topic, right? So like to some extent, you know, if that point was going to be made, then, you know, it needed to be made much, much earlier, right? Like, and this is just sort of like an element of like, you know, when you know the person is going off topic, then you stop them and you stop them early, right? And when they start to ramble, because Donnie is, I don't know, not famous, but he's good at rambling on and on and on.
Yes.
And he'll go and he'll be like, I'm not done, I'm almost done. And then he'll make like 4 more distinct, separate, unrelated points. And you'll be like, I don't even remember like what you said or how like this thing that you're talking about is connected to the like when I tried to stop you. And like, so, being very insistent, I guess, sort of, first, and I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't really know on this point, but like being insistent and sort of and saying, stop, pause, right? When he says, I'm almost done, I'm almost done. No, you're done now. Like,
Yeah.
I cannot understand you. If you keep talking, you're going to be on your own, right? We can only move forward together. And being sort of very firm on that. And this is something that a lot of people, get tripped up on and get tripped up on very easily, is where it's like, well, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. Well, I'll let you make your point. No, you're not almost done, right? And and a good way to do this, like like a phrase to use is, "You've lost me," right? I'm not following you. I don't understand you. I don't understand how this is connected to what we're supposed to be talking about. And, if you keep talking, you might as well not, because I've stopped listening, right? Like, just make it clear to them that like you are talking to a wall at this point, because none of this makes sense. So we need to go back. You need to pick me up and you need to make this make sense. And then like layered on top of that, you can be like, and part of making it make sense at this point is you need to connect this to what we're talking about. Because like, you just be like, I don't understand this in terms of out of Africa, right? Again, I don't understand how this connects to out of Africa. Connect it for me, right? If you're saying this matters to our topic, how?
I think one of the issues here was that I was giving him way too much the benefit of the doubt, because and typically I think maybe this is because I am sort of morbidly fascinated in a kind of rubbernecking a car accident kind of way at the way that some of these fundamentalist minds work, that I get some sort of entertainment about hearing their arguments. So I generally let them go on, especially if they're really crazy. But it does sometimes come back to bite me. But I genuinely thought that we were doing some sort of introductory thing, talking about genetic principles, and I really did think that we would get there. I thought we would get to out of Africa. I didn't know why we were wasting so much time with this intro when I was told that the discussion was only going to be 1 hour. And I like literally I was confused. I should have said, look, you've lost me. You need to tie this to out of Africa. And I think to some extent that's what I did in that clip that we showed. And then Donnie showed, well, this is out of Africa, showing that he fundamentally seems to think that he was on topic, even though he's talking about a completely different time, space, like a completely different theory in almost every regard. He's talking about a totally different subject, and he doesn't even seem to realize it. And that was what I only found out in retrospect. Like when thinking about the exchange the next day, I was like, I was just struck with the fact that it seemed like he genuinely thought that he was talking about out of Africa. And he couldn't understand that he was not even talking about the correct topic. And I don't know what to do with that, because if he feels that he's on topic, and in reality, what he's saying has nothing to do with the agreed about topic. It's just like, do we just cut it short? What do we do? Where do we go from here? None of his arguments are actually relevant to the topic that was agreed upon.
Well, I mean, I think you have two options in that situation, right? One of them is that you just kind of, if you are in a position where you can pivot and just talk about that topic, then you do that, right? And you just bust them on that. And sometimes, like, it's kind of like, sometimes you just follow the white rabbit, because sometimes they'll say stuff and you can just question off the last answer and riff off of that. And that will, get you to a good place, right? And that, it's like you follow the white rabbit. Sometimes it leads you to Wonderland, right?
That's what I did for the first 25 minutes of this debate, basically.
Yeah. So I guess if that's what you were, if that's what you were doing, and you just kind of got to a place where you're like, none of this ties to Africa, then I think calling him out on it was, I think, one of the correct things to do. The other correct thing to do, I think, would have been or a more subtle way to do it would have just been to like, how does this have to do with our topic? Tie it back for me and put it back on him, rather than it seeming like you're complaining that, like, it's like he's gotten one over on you. Be like that's very interesting, and it doesn't seem to matter. Like, make this matter for me, right? And you put the onus back on him. Be like, connect this for me to Out of Africa, because all of this, as far as I know, happened in Africa. And we're supposed to be talking about how this mattered when we left Africa. So tell me how it connects, right? And you just sort of like let him twist in the wind on, like, so he's gone off topic. He's created this problem for himself, right? So hand it back to him, right? Just be like, so now it's your problem that you've created for yourself. Because I mean, I want to talk about Out of Africa, and I have no idea how this connects to it. So connect it for me. And then every time he tries to connect it, then you can just go, okay, so that doesn't make sense, right? That doesn't make sense either, right? Because now you're still talking about a different thing, but that's not this thing. We're supposed to be talking about this thing. Come on, man. You're the one who called this debate. You're the one who's supposed to be prepared. I'm doing this impromptu. How are you not getting it, right?
I think
And
that's
sort of
like putting the onus on him, putting him in the hot seat, because I think that after several attempts, and I think I was also messaging him in the private chat during this, like, hey, let's move on to Out of Africa. And especially when there was like only 15 minutes left in the conversation out of the promised hour, and we still hadn't got to Out of Africa. I was like, what is happening here? And I think that I do bring up and try to move the conversation there several times, but it was always me trying to move the conversation. It was never me sort of directing Donnie by asking him questions. It was more so just me trying to be like, okay, well, I want to talk about Out of Africa. So when can I present the evidence for Out of Africa? Because I was really excited to talk about it, because the evidence showing that the Homo sapiens originated in Africa and then migrated out of Africa around 70,000 years ago is very strong and compelling. And I was prepared to talk about that, and I was excited to talk about that evidence. And so I kept saying, like, what gives? Why can't I present my arguments here, like, for Out of Africa? And I kept trying to wait or direct the conversation to the point where I could actually present my case. So maybe the fact
and you know
that
what, you know what a good way to go about doing that would be is that, I mean, I think you have to be a little bit more like, at some point, and I think it was around the 25-minute mark, you were like, what gives? Like, why are we not talking about Out of Africa? And he's like, no, we are. And you're like, well, I want to talk about Out of Africa. When are we going to talk about Out of Africa? And like, and again, these are small things, right? Because you're a very experienced debater and you do almost everything right. But it is just sort of, instead of being like, when are we going to talk about this? You'd be like, okay, you done? You done talk? Because you're done. Good. Now. And then you just start, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't ask for permission. You ask for forgiveness, right?
I completely agree with you on that one. I think that maybe I wasn't assertive enough in actually moving the topic forward instead of asking if we could move the topic forward and allowing him as the host to make that decision. I also question about whether or not we should have done a more formal style of each of us presenting an opening, because I think that would have shown a little bit more about what I thought the topic was going to be and versus what he thought the topic was going to be, if we saw that our openings were just addressing two totally separate ideas.
And I mean, you know what would be really interesting is I'd like to know from the people who watch this video, comment in the comments, like, how much do you guys watch the openings? Because for me personally, I often will skip them completely, right? Like, I'm not interested in the openings because I'm interested in the interaction, right? The spiciness, right? The debate, the back and forth. That's what I'm interested in. So like, your opening could have been on like the moon as far as I care. And so could his, right?
I was exactly like you before I started my debate channel and before I started doing these debates. Every single time I would skip the openings and go right to the open discussion, because that's the entertainment. That's what I came for in a debate. That's what I enjoy. But then since having to participate and craft my own openings. Now I have a bit more of an appreciation for, you know, the work, or I guess the thought that goes into how you structure your opening, how you're presenting these arguments, and I can appreciate them more. And nowadays I do find that I at least will watch at least more than, you know, 50% of the openings. Whereas before,
well, here's something that I would suggest to you that you can try at some point and see if you like it, because this is a stylistic thing. But so for me, and this is partly because of my background, right, as a lawyer who does like cross examinations, right, is that, so like if you, for example, if you watch like my first Kent Hovind debate, my opening was like, "Hi, I'm Mr. Anderson, and we're going to be talking about kinds. Over to you, Kent." And then we were like, open discussion. And now you see my opening, right? Because my opening is in the interaction, right? It's the questions are laying the groundwork. And it's by essentially putting my case to him and getting him to agree to it or disagree to it and like discuss it as we go, that A, that keeps the audience engaged, and B, it starts to force concessions, and it starts to like, because the really big difference between putting your side to somebody and telling that person your side is that they can ignore everything you said if you just tell them that stuff, right?
As does often happen.
Often happens, especially with this kind of opponent, right? But if you say, you know, let's see, let's take the out of Africa example, right? So no, I'm just trying to remember my out of Africa stuff here. You know, so I'd be like, here, you pretend to be Donnie and I'll be you, okay? So, you know, so sir, you'll agree with me that there is a phylogenetic tree that connects all of the people in the world through their mitochondrial DNA, right?
Yes, back to Adam and Eve.
Right. Or whoever, but it was somebody. And we can see that all of the different groups of people all across the world are connected, right?
Yes.
Okay. And some of those branches are longer and some of them are shorter, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what that means then, when we draw a longer branch on a phylogenetic tree, is that there are more changes linearly between one node and the next node, right?
Yes, but these mutation rates can vary for different populations. So it's
That's not, sir, that's not my question. That wasn't my question at all. My question was a simple one. It counts the number of changes. The longer the line, the more changes, right?
That is correct.
Right. Now you say that those changes happen quickly in some people and slowly in others, right?
Yes.
So you're saying, look, those lines don't necessarily mean anything in terms of time because we don't know the rates, right?
Yes.
Okay. But if we did know the rates, if the rate was consistent, then it would be logical to infer that the longer lines represent longer periods of time, right?
At this point, my Donnie's head just explodes, and I try to slip and slide my way out of answering this.
Do it. No, I know. Do that now to me, right? And I'm going to show you stuff.
I'm too honest to even be able to think of a slippery enough.
All right.
Of that.
But do you see how when I did it that way, as opposed to just saying that stuff, that it's harder to ignore because I'm feeding it to you piece by piece, right?
That is one of the things that I really admire about your debating style, is that you tend to lead your opponents down your line of questioning, or lead them where you want them. Whereas I feel like my style is more so, again, because I think maybe I'm just entertained or fascinated with how the inner machinations of their heads work with these people. I tend to try to drive right to the point of what I see as the part where they leave the train of reality.
Yeah.
And I try to present like, well, here's the evidence that
that's
directly refutes you. how do you respond
Yes.
to this? And to me,
Yes.
I don't know
And
how they're going to respond. I'm not leading them anywhere. I'm curious because I'm like, how could you possibly respond to this? Because it's such a defeater to your point. And so I just try to rush right to that point and just present it to them and just hear how they respond and then just go
yeah,
from
but
there.
then your brain explodes, right?
Yes.
That's what the problem is that, yes, that's exactly what I see you doing in this debate
Yeah.
over and over and over again, where you're like, no, that's wrong. And I know why it's wrong. And I'm going to tell you right now. Right. And what I'm saying is that, like, so all of your instincts and everything that you're doing in this debate is correct right up until that moment. Right. And it's at that moment that I'm suggesting that you could do something slightly different. And that is, you see the point, you know where they're going to go, you know you know where they're going to either run into a brick wall, turn left and agree to you, or agree with you rather, or turn right and look faintly ridiculous. Right. You know, there's only three options, right? And so it doesn't help if how fast you go to the brick towards the brick wall doesn't help. The point is that you have to make sure that they don't leave that path, right? And so once you've identified, all right, we're you know, I see it. I see that T intersection, right? Now you slow down, and that's where you flip into using some of these techniques that I'm talking about, right? So you can do your regular style for like 90% of your debate, and then just in that moment you go, all right, so, and this is like, you know, here's some phraseology for you to use. I just want to understand what you're telling me. You're telling me that this, right? Okay. And you'll also agree that this, right? And so then you know what they're going to say, you know what their line of logic is, and you know why it is that that's going to run into that brick wall or turn left or turn right. And so then you just slow down and you make sure that you get all of the little pieces along the way. And the reason for that is that what ends up happening when you rush to the wall is that there's like a, oh, well, that's not what I meant. When you don't, you know damn well that's what they meant, right? Oh, no, no, no. Like, as soon as they see it, right? So you see it first. So you're at an advantageous position because you know that they're, you know, they're full of baloney and that they're going to try and weasel out of it. So now, first thing you do is as you start to walk them down that path, is you got to cut off all the little side, you know, channels. And you're not telling me that blah, 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 right? No, of course not. Good. And you're not saying this, right? No, of course not. Good. And it's all of the weaker arguments that they probably would retreat to because they figure they've got their strong argument, you know, down, and they don't realize that, no, there's a bigger problem with your strong argument, but let's get rid of all your weak ones first, right? Then at the end, now here's a problem with your strong argument. Oh, well, and then now they realize, oh no, right? All of my escape hatches have been nailed shut by my own hand, right? And now I have to confront the contradiction. Does that make sense?
Reminds me of so I had this quantum mechanics professor who was this Soviet guy who was absolutely like dry humor, hilarious. But whenever you'd ask him a question that was like subtle or tricky or something, he'd say, "This question is lawyerish." And this reminds me, these questions are lawyerish questions, but I think that he meant it in a negative way, but I think that this is a very positive application of lawyerishness, and that I probably should have applied more lawyerishness in this interaction. Like as soon as I started getting frustrated that we were not moving to the actual topic of the debate, I think that the gears should have switched and I should have started getting small concessions that lead up to something actually relevant to the topic that we could then chew on. Like you're saying, like I should have led Donnie down the road that I want to go rather than just vocally
following him and hoping he would go there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think that that's, I mean, look, again, you know, a moment's a moment. You're never going to like say and do all the right things, you know, every time. Like whenever I look back at any of my performances, I'm always like, ah, damn it. I should have.
And
I
in
should have
my
said this,
defense,
that.
this was like past 2 a.m. at this point. I'm like, I was so beyond like frustrated with the debate and how it was going, and also just exhausted in the middle of the night on top of it. Like, this is not gonna be my best performance, even if we had been on topic. It was like way past my bedtime.
Hey, I don't think you need to make any excuses. It like I said, I had to watch so many debates to even find something. So, it's fine. But you know what? Like, I think for the audience, like, nobody has even like really seen, nobody's even really seen much of the debate we're talking about here. Let's show them a little bit of it.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna pick another spot here, and we'll go to that one. Let's try right about there-ish. That looks like a good spot. All right.
Okay, so therefore you're going to go on record saying that Northeast Africa is not the center of genetic diversity.
Yeah, genetic diversity in the Middle East is not the epicenter. Northeast Africa, not the epicenter. Okay, like the epicenter is in sub-Saharan Africa, like Ethiopia region, that kind of general area of sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay, I want to write down your answers for our second podcast, so I can
All
make
of this
sure
is
that.
recorded. You don't need to write it down.
Okay, so firstly, Northeast Africa being the center of genetic diversity, you disagree with. Do you disagree with Africans having more PRDM9 genes that act in recombination than non-Africans? You agree with that or disagree?
I'll agree with that. Who cares?
Okay. Do you believe that there have been waves after waves of migration into Africa resulting in replacements?
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you agree that Africans have been subjected historically to faster mutation rates for a number of reasons?
Why would that be the case?
Well, firstly, being environmentally related. I've got papers here showing that environments can result in a faster mutation rate, and Africans are historically where? Closer to the equator.
But you also say Neanderthals have a higher mutation rate and they're not near the equator. So
well, it doesn't there's different environmental factors. Neanderthals lived in harsh ice age related conditions where the clouds would block vitamin D from getting in. As a matter of fact, when they sequenced the Neanderthal genomes, they found massive rungs of homozygosity, showing that they actually showed a lot of degenerated genes and alleles in Neanderthal genetics. But yeah, their environments, they're ice age. So are you saying that ice age related conditions are not as bad as being close to the equator? I mean, they're both bad environments, but they're different. Doesn't mean that they're not bad, though. I don't know. What's your point there? Go ahead.
Yeah, my point is that mutation rates are not significantly different based on where you live. Like, I mean, unless you're living next to a nuclear reactor or something, like your mutation rate is going to be similar for most of the human population. Like, you're not going to have higher mutation rates in Africa. You're not going to have higher mutation rates in Northern Europe. Okay, like it's going to be very similar mutation rates.
Okay,
we don't observe. I mean, show me a paper that says Africans have higher mutation rates in their genomes. You've got one paper that they've got one single gene that has higher mutation rates. That, that doesn't prove jack.
Okay, so I guess this brings us back to our original debate, where you can literally manifest worldwide genetic variation on a phylogenetic tree, and you have differing size branches indicating.
Okay. So, there, that's a good example where, like, you made a really great point. You had like this zinger about like, oh, well, you'd agree like that the people who are living closer to the equator, they have higher mutation rates. And you're like, you say Neanderthals had higher mutation rates and they're not closer to the equator. And he's like, well, blah, 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 right? And then he's like, what do you mean? And then you explained what you meant, right? And you gave your argument. I want you to, like, let's do this. I'm going to be Donnie this time. Okay. And I'm going to be a turd about it too.
All right.
And I
What
want
is
you,
do I get to be Grayson?
you get to be Grayson. I
Okay.
want you to get that stuff that you just said out of me by asking questions. Right? So say the same thing, make the same points, but I want you to try and do it as questions, right? And the format that I like to use typically, and you don't have to do this, but to start with, I think you should try it, is instead of just saying the things, say a little piece of it and then ask me if I agree. Or put it, say, I put it to you, or isn't that correct? Isn't this true? Blah, 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 right? Right? And get the little pieces out of me so that I'm saying those things. And it's now, once you get to the end, you've made your point, but now I've kind of agreed to it. It's going to be a lot harder for me to be like, no. It's just like, okay. Well, you just said yes, 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 a whole bunch of times, a whole bunch of little things that add up to one big thing.
Okay. Well, first of all, Donnie, good to see you. You're looking much better than normal. I don't know if you've changed your haircut or what, but
you look
ask you something.
The same level of handsomeness as usual.
So, you think that mutation rates are higher at the equator, correct?
Right. I mean, you just look at like skin cancer. You get more skin cancer at the equator. Skin cancer is a mutation of like the genes. That's why people have darker skin at the equator.
I didn't ask you about skin cancer, Donnie. I just asked you about mutation rates. Now you will.
Well, yeah, but skin cancer has to do with mutations. Grayson, skin cancer has to do.
Donnie, hold on. Let me ask you this question. Do you also agree that people live on the equator in South America?
Yes.
Okay, and you would agree that on the phylogenetic tree that you showed earlier, that the native South Americans actually have some of the least amount of mutations in their genomes. They're some of the most homozygous populations, right?
Yeah, but that's because of the founder effect, because you're failing to account for the fact that those people have only arrived in South America relatively recently. And so it doesn't have to do, like, it also has to do with the fact that, like, so, and number two, there's faster mutation rates.
I didn't ask about number two, Donnie. Hold on. Because in your paradigm, true or false, there would also be a founder effect in Africa, because you don't think that humans originated in Africa. You think that they spread there in the same way that they spread to South America.
Yeah, but there are a number of different factors that you have to consider here, right? So there's the faster mutation rates. There's selective sweeps that could be going on. There is
but hold on, Donnie, you said that the faster mutation rates was due to living at the equator, but in South America they also live in the equator, but they don't have those fast mutation rates.
Right. Well, like I told you, there's a number of factors. There's a number of factors involved, so you can't just look at one thing.
So earlier when you said that it was because of the environment, that there were more factors, and that was not the explanatory factor for this data.
It's one of the explanatory factors.
Okay, so it's multivariate, but the original explanation was insufficient. Gotcha.
Do you see how that played out differently?
Yeah.
And like, and I'm twisting and turning it.
I was asking the questions. In the clip you played, I noticed that Donnie was asking me the lawyerish questions. I don't know how that happened, but at some point in that debate, Donnie starts asking me the answers, trying to get concessions out of me. I don't know how that happened, but wow.
So look, like sometimes you'll be able to just drive the bus, right? Like I got, there's a combination of being lucky and good, like, because like, to some degree, when I seize control, like I'm doing that on purpose and I know what I'm doing and I'm not letting go, right? But also to some degree, sometimes some of my opponents let me do that because they don't know how to take it back, right? Donnie does. And so even if you look at, for example, my debate with him about something else to do with genetics, what was it?
Genetic entropy?
No, not the genetic entropy one, because that one wasn't really a questioning style debate. It was the the round 2 that I had with him that had to do with something else. I can't remember, something to do with genetics. But you'll find that what happens is that we trade, right? And so, like, to be fair to your opponent, you're, and not look like a jerk, and look almost like a Darth Dawkins kind of a thing, where it's like, well, you just like to ask questions, you don't give the answers. You have to be willing to trade. You have to be willing to say, like, okay, well, you ask me questions for a while, and then that's going to give me kind of like the moral authority to say, no, I insist, answer my question. I answered plenty of yours, right? So it's not bad to give that other person the initiative for a time, but you do need to know how to take it back, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when they're not going to give it willingly, right? And, a lot of times the answer is that you have to be a little bit rude, and me, I'm a big proponent for, like, be polite, be cordial, but, like, sometimes, look, if you're, if you're dodging, and one like very common dodge is that people will be like, well, I'm going to ask another question, or I want to ask another. No. You're going to answer this one. Like, I asked you first. It's my turn. Answer this line of questions, right? And another and another and another till I get my answer, right? Mm-hmm. But that was good. Like, your line of questioning there was good, and I saw you thinking on your feet there, and you twisted it to the South America thing, which I don't know if you had prepared, but it seemed like you came up with on the spot.
Yeah, as we were listening to the clip, I was just, I wished that I had brought up other equatorial regions. So you gave me the opportunity to do that with your foe, Donnie.
Sure. But, like, the point is that you create those little opportunities for yourself, and then you kind of seize on them, and you're going to come up with good stuff on the fly, and some of it'll be prepared, and some of it'll be, just kind of from your head. And that's kind of how you do it. And you can see how, like, I don't know if you feel like that's like that's something that will be effective, but it's certainly something you can try out. All right, let's move on. Let's try another one so we can see. Part of this is just so people can see an interesting debate, right? And part of it's because it's going to be instructive.
Yeah, you're the debate coach, the debate dissector.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to, bloviate and pontificate about a subject of interest to me.
Well, I always welcome the opportunity to learn from others and get better at, I mean, I love arguing. It's one of my favorite, hobbies. So the whole reason I started my channel was because I was arguing too much with my friends and family. And I thought I should direct this energy towards less, maybe some better avenues on the internet with strangers and creationists and flat earthers.
Oh, there you go. See, my wife, like, I don't win a lot of ironically, I don't win a lot of arguments at home, right?
You're not supposed to say that on your debate channel.
It's a little different when you're married to the person.
Okay, I wanna get pointers from Mrs. Anderson next time. She could really teach me a thing or two.
She'll keep her secrets. I think she's not gonna tell you. You're gonna have to be satisfied with the second best. All right, let's have a look at this clip here.
On top of the problems, the biggest problem is the variable mutation rates. Now, in these papers that we've looked at, the reason why mutation rates are variable are not fully understood, but they could be due to gene conversion, for example, which might have a correlation to levels of heterozygosity. They describe all this in the paper. Might have to do with environment, might have to do with defects in DNA repair enzymes, might have to do with the PRDM9 gene. Okay, and there's papers even in the secular literature trying to explain this type of stuff. So the data itself doesn't change.
Okay, so right here, I want you to come up with, on the spot, how do you seize control and ask him questions to make these points that he's just made less telling?
Yeah, well, again, he never actually showed any evidence that Africans have a different mutation rate than non-Africans. He showed one gene that had a higher mutation rate, but you could show that for any gene in any like people that you're comparing. It's not anything indicative of what's happening on the whole genome level, which is what he needs to show for his hypothesis to have any evidence to support it. You have to show that genome-wide Africans have a higher mutation rate, which no one has shown. He's saying, oh, well, there could be lots of variables that are contributing to this. Contributing to what? You haven't shown that there is a there.
All right, let's do this. Let's do this again. I'm going to be Donnie. All right, so take what you just said, but I want you to hit me with it, and I want you to get it from me.
Okay. So I would just ask you, do you have any evidence showing that the African genomes have a higher mutation rate than non-African genomes?
Yeah, of course I do. I've got these papers that I just showed you. I've got the paper that this phylogenetic tree came from. We just went over I don't know if you were listening, we just went over this paper with respect to the PRDM9 gene, right? Like, all of these are scientific papers. These are published in the secular literature. So
I don't
yes,
know.
I have data.
So
do you want to go through it with me?
I was listening. I don't know if you were reading those papers, because one, those papers were
Grayson, obviously, I've read the papers. Don't insult me.
Well, you just made some claims about the
What do you think I am? Like an idiot? Yeah, I've read the papers.
You just made some claims about the papers that were not true. One, they were...
Well, have you read the papers? How many of these papers have you read? You read the PRDM9 gene paper.
They were by Rob Carter, not published in academic sources. They're published in Creation.
That's not the question I asked you. I asked you whether or not you read the PRDM9 paper. You haven't, have you?
Again, the PRDM9 paper.
Well, now you're dodging the question. Dodgy Grayson. Does the
PRDM9 paper show that African genomes have a higher mutation rate?
Yes, of course it does. It shows that they have a higher mutation rate with respect to the PRDM9 genome. That's what I've been trying to tell you. If you were listening, you'd know that.
You're confusing the word genome with gene. These are different concepts. Please tell me that you can understand the difference. Tell me what the difference is between gene and genome.
We're not playing quiz show here. If you want to correct my terminology, then you can go for it. But I'm not playing quiz show with you here.
Fine.
So this the PRDM9 gene then, okay? Smart guy. The PRDM9.
Yes or no? Is there a difference between gene and genome? Yes or no?
Yes. You're right.
Hey.
You got me. I misspoke. Are you happy?
So if you can show...
So you can be right on this one thing, and I'll be right with respect to the rest of the debate. How's that sound?
If you can show that there's a difference in genome mutation rates, then you will have supported your point. But until
so you want me to show the difference between the entire genome? Well, I'm sorry, Grayson, but you know what? I guess you got me that I can't show you that the entire genome is different because they're the same animal. We're all related. We're all created in God's image. We all descended from Adam and Eve, and even though their mutation rates are higher, they're not different genomes. And you know that.
You have not shown that their mutation rates are higher, because in order to do that, you would need to show that.
I just showed you these scientific papers published in secular literature, for goodness sake. So the PRDM9 gene.
Yeah. Also, that was just done.
Okay, let's just break character. Let's just break character for a second. So because I think you're in the weeds, and I think this is sort of instructive, right?
Okay.
One thing that that happened here was you said something that was like not really offensive, but that I took offense to, right? And I got very indignant, and I started getting mad, and I controlled the conversation and threw you off of asking your questions by taking offense, right? And it's something sometimes people will do to you, right? And so like you know, you're never going to be perfect in terms of like not, you know, saying anything that's even like tangentially offensive to somebody, especially if they're looking for it, right? So you have to be able to sort of calm the situation down and you know, and refocus, right? And you know, like getting caught up on like, you know, I got you with respect to gene and genome, you know, probably not the best approach, because like Donnie knows the difference between gene and genome, and you know, like I actually made that mistake myself, you know, in terms of gene and genome, and yeah, I know the difference between gene and genome. but I just said something wrong, and like that's not a big deal. But like, I'm not sure what the point you were trying to get at was, but it seemed like I was just sort of able to circle around it. What were you trying to get
The main
at?
point is that all of Donnie's evidence for this differential mutation rate was coming down to a differential mutation rate in one gene. When he's trying to extrapolate that to mean that there's a differential mutation rate between the genomes, and you cannot make that leap. That's why that distinction was so necessary, because that's all the evidence that he presented.
Right. So let's hear it. Now, I'm going to be you. You get to be Donnie here for a second, right? And you can be as much of an invasive person as you want. Okay.
Okay.
So, all right. So, sir, you're telling me that the PRDM9 gene in Africans mutates faster. Is that right?
Exactly right. You're
Okay.
listening really well, well done, Grayson.
I do my best. I do my best. But you're actually showing the like the phylogenetic trees that you're showing here. Are those with respect to the PRDM9 gene or something else?
Those are mitochondrial genetic differences.
Okay, so they don't have anything to do with the PRDM9 or PRDM9 gene then, is that right?
No, they're in a different part of the genome.
Okay, do you have any evidence that those guys are mutating faster? Because we don't have it, like we don't know how long the lines are between, you know, the different points on the PRDM9 gene. We only know with respect, at least, you know, based on this drawing with respect to the mitochondrial DNA, right?
Nathaniel Jeanson keeps saying that he really wants to go down to Africa and measure this himself, but unfortunately, even though they have millions of dollars of funding at the organization he works for, they actually haven't arranged that trip since 2017, when he said that he really wanted to do that. So we don't have that data.
All right. So the answer to my question is no, you don't have that evidence.
No, unfortunately not.
Okay, so with respect to the graph that we're looking at, the longer lines in the mitochondrial DNA, that's not explained by the mutations in the PRDM9 gene, is it?
It could be.
Really? It could. Okay, so that's interesting. So, because my understanding is that each portion of my understanding is that the mitochondrial DNA is not actually in the nucleus, that it's in the mitochondria. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so if something mutates in the nuclear genome, then you're telling me that there is a possible way, it could be the case that that's going to affect mutation rates in the mitochondrial DNA, which is in a completely different part of the cell. Is that right?
There's lots of factors, lots of ins and outs and what have yous.
All right. What's the first one?
Like the environment, being near the equator.
Oh, so being near the equator can make it so that the nuclear DNA affects the mitochondrial DNA?
It's a confounding variable that would be affecting both mutation rates.
All right, but we're not talking about whether or not something affects both mutation rates, are we, sir? We're talking about whether or not a higher mutation rate on the PRDM9 gene is going to affect and be correlated with a higher mutation rate on the mitochondrial DNA. And I put it to you, sir, that there is no evidence that that is the case, and that you said that as an off-the-cuff remark and you have no basis for it. Isn't that true?
I meant to say that the same thing could be causing both of them to have a higher mutation rate.
Right. Okay. So they're not linked then, in the sense that the higher PRDM9 rate is correlated, as far as you know, as far as everything that you know, that's got nothing to do with the mitochondrial rate, does it?
It could just be indicative of a shared common factor.
Sir, I asked you a very simple question. I'd like a straight answer. It doesn't have any effect on the mitochondrial mutation rate, does it?
No.
Good. Are you aware of any indication that the PRDM9 mutation rate is either correlated or causally connected to any other portions of the DNA at all?
It doesn't have a direct effect, but there could be a shared cause for both.
There could be elephants on the moon, sir. I'm asking you whether you know that there is such a thing?
No, it's just a hypothesis.
Okay, thank you.
And it's in the Bible.
Yeah, okay, so breaking character again. So you see how, like, you know, when I did it, I took one thing and I connected it to one thing, and then I kind of went down, and it wasn't sort of like I broke it into smaller pieces, right? And when you try to feed them big pieces, they can get stuck, right? And also, like, I either A, know where you're going and I don't go there on purpose, or B, I don't know where you're going and I can't even help you to make sense, right? Because, like, I'm just confused and I'm not really interested in trying to help you make sense either. I'm perfectly happy to let you twist in the wind, right? So, I mean, this stuff takes it's not simple. B, I haven't given you like the whole class on how to do it first before I start making you try and do it in C or on camera and on the spot. And D, it's hard.
Yeah, this is fun. I've never done role-playing debates like this, so this is a fun little game.
It's different, right? I love doing this kind of stuff. So, and I'm glad, like, you know, you're skilled enough that, you know, that I can do this. Not that the other people that I've worked with, you know, aren't, but, you know, I'm just trying to say that you're doing well.
It's not my first rodeo.
Hey, yeah, right. All right. Do you want to do a couple more, or are you getting a little tired? I don't want you.
No, we can do a couple more clips from the debate.
All right, let's do it.
I guess Donnie even didn't even bill it as a debate. He called it an informal discussion.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I guess it was an informal discussion / debate, right? Let's see. Let's try about here-ish.
That's your assumption. But again, if you have...
It would be very easy to disprove that assumption if you could show me that mitochondrial mutation rates vary based on these haplogroups. If you could show me that, then that would easily refute this assumption. But you can't, because no one's ever measured it. It's not observable.
Okay, so firstly, we understand that Africans have more working PRDM9 sites, more hotspots.
That doesn't affect mitochondrial DNA. There's no recombination in mitochondrial DNA.
So your mitochondrial DNA specifically is reflected here in this phylogeny, and you have differing size branches. And we've already established that the size of the branch is the number of mutations. You can count up the differences. You can count up the differences in each branch that go back to a common ancestor. And so if you have differing size branches going back to a common ancestor, that means you have variable mutation rates. This is pretty basic. But nonetheless, if you disagree with that, we're the ones as creationists that are saying, okay, in light of all of these factors, we're going to look to some of these African people groups and we're going to predict. We are confident that they're, whether it's more generations, right? Maybe they're marrying at a younger age, 13 to 15, and therefore more generations have passed and therefore more mutations. Or maybe it's DNA repair enzyme related. Maybe it has to do with gene conversion, PRDM9 gene. Maybe it has to do with environment. You know,
you see how this is just an ad hoc explanation for like data that conflicts with your worldview? I mean, this is the same thing that you accused the out of Africa theory of doing with the bottlenecks. You're just coming up, you're spitballing any possible explanation that you can think of that could possibly explain this observation.
So is it your position, yes or no, that everything I'm saying in terms of...
So actually that one, I don't know if that was the best clip because I think we covered that ground right before.
I was about to say, I feel like I just heard this argument.
I know, right? But yeah, you're right.
Donnie is a lot worse at it than you are.
Well, yeah. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, can you see the difference? I'm trying to make, you know, chicken soup out of chicken poop right now because I obviously didn't play the right clip. But I guess, you know, one thing that we can take from that is there is a difference between telling and asking, right? And you can see that, you kind of said like, you're just spitballing, right? And I think I would suggest that it is more effective to be like, okay, I want to go back. I want to go through those things one by one. So the first one, you said maybe this, and you don't have any evidence for that, do you? If you do, I'd like to know what it is. What's the evidence for this one? All right, let me write these down. What was the next one? Right? Okay, I want to talk about that one now. What's your evidence for that one? Nothing. Cool. And just crucify him on those things, right? And just like go one by one. And he wants to change the subject. We're not done. We're not done. Let's go back. Number 4, right? What's your evidence? You said this. You got anything? You got anything to back that one up? Right? And then you get to the end and be like, so like, I mean, based on all this, I feel like you're just spitballing. You're just coming up with explanations willy-nilly. Right. And now when you say that, it's a lot more telling, because you've gone through, you dragged him through the mud and you slowed down. Right. And sort of like sitting on the good point. Right. When you get that good point, savor it. Just like dwell on it for a second. Let it sink in with the audience. Don't let it glance off and slip by. And
that's true. I think I do have
it.
a tendency, like as soon as I think of like the good counterpoint, I just kind of want to blurt it out and say it. Like I did that in that clip, like even while Donnie was still talking, I just like instantly debunked what he was saying with like the first rebuttal that comes to mind. I'm definitely not like easing towards it with like these questions that lead up to it perfectly, like a good lawyerish technique.
But like, you're never going to do it perfectly. I don't do it perfectly. Right. And that's, people will be like, I think you missed a trick there. As people watch more and more of my videos, right, they get more critical and they're like, you're not always following your own rules, Mr. Anderson. And I'm like, give me a break, right? Like, I'm doing this on the fly, guys, and nobody's going to do it perfectly. Right. But these are the principles. These are sort of like the ideals that you go for. And then, when you're in the moment, you muddle, right? And you do your best, right? So like coming up, like it's not always easy to like, so you're there's a chance you can do this because you've got a bunch of the tools already, because you can recognize that point on the fly. You can construct the counterpoint, figure out what it is, and you can figure out what the different, like off ramps that they're going to try and take are. Right. So like all you really need to do is control yourself and not jump to the end and sort of just like, okay, let's establish all the things I know you think. Then we'll talk about the meat. Right. Then
a little restraint.
just a touch. Just a touch. Yeah. All right. I got a couple more here. Well, let's do, I get 2 more. Do you want to do 1 more or 2 more?
Like we could do 2 more.
All right. Well, we'll do the next one and then we'll see where we're at.
Maybe no more role playing though.
We'll see whether or not it's a really good one. If I can't resist, then you can't blame me. I'm only human. Man is sinful by his nature, Grayson, and I'm
restraint, Mr. Anderson, restraint.
We all have our weaknesses.
Haplogroup.
The L3 haplogroup. But and what's the reasoning for this?
Because that's the genetic signature of the out of Africa. It was like the actual people that like were the ones that migrated out of Africa, right, were L3 mitochondrial haplotypes.
But what about the genetic signature? What gives this? You're saying genetic signature, but what gives the? What about their genetics gives that signature?
The fact that all of the outside of Africa haplotypes are nested within the L3. That's the genetic signature. Is what makes that nesting that we can observe.
Right, but what results in that nesting?
The genetic sequence of the mitochondrial DNA.
But what about the mitochondrial DNA sequence makes every other haplogroup nest within it?
Okay, your DNA is nested within your ancestors' DNA. Okay, you're derived from them. Okay, you can compare the sequences. If you don't know who's the parent and who's the child, you can tell which is which because one is nested within the other.
But my question is, to say that non-Africans nest within Africans, what about African versus non-African genetics give you that idea?
The sequence of their DNA.
What does their sequence look like?
You want me to start listing A, C's, and T's? What are you asking?
No, just say, what about the sequence? Is it the level of diversity, the level of mutations? Is it the pieces of DNA that they have in their population? Because your arguments are circular. You're not really telling me. You're just saying, well, it's because of their genetics. And I'm asking you, well, what about their genetics? And then you're saying, well, because non-Africans nest within Africans. Well, why? Oh, because they're tell me what about their genetics?
So you're asking, what about, like, comparing two sequences allows us to know which sequence nests within the other sequence?
So you're saying you take an African genetic sequence.
Yeah.
And then a non-African genetic sequence.
Two non-African genetic sequences.
Okay, and then and what about the sequencing data tells you that one nests within the other?
Okay, so when you're looking at two non-African mitochondrial DNA, right, you can see the mutations that they have, and you can see the base pairs that they have in common with the African DNA, right? So you can very easily decipher the order of which these things nest based on, like, you know, if you have an A here, like an A and a T here, and you have a G and a T here, you know, like they both have a T in common, and then you have the common, like the African, like more basal sequence there, you can tell, oh, these two derived from this one based on their sequences, right? You compare them to each other and you say, okay, obviously these two, like, one did not come from the other between these two. But you look at the parental strain and you can tell very easily, oh, these are nested within this one. They are derived from it. It's so, like,
okay. So
that was very frustrating to listen to.
So I want to give you another chance at that one.
I was trying to shout at myself the whole time. Just say similarities. They're genetic similarities. I think that answers the question. I don't know why I went off in that entire convoluted explanation when literally just comparing genetic similarities would have sufficed as an answer. I don't know what Donnie was wanting out of that, because it seemed like he was really insistent on getting a particular kind of answer. I don't know what he was fishing for out of that exchange.
You know what I think he was fishing for there was he kept on you because you were struggling. And I have a feeling the reason you were struggling there is just simply the fact that you were tired. It was almost 4 in the morning or something like that, right? And so by doggedly pursuing you with those questions, he makes it look like you don't know what you're talking about, right? And I think that you know, and when I chose this clip, I didn't realize that you know, this was likely just because you were tired. I thought maybe it was because you know, you were uncertain, or that you were struggling with
I was genuinely flabbergasted. I was just so stunned that he was not seeming to understand this, because I thought I was offering perfectly understandable explanations. I don't know what he was getting hung up on or why he wasn't understanding what I was saying. So I was just genuinely, like, flabbergasted that he kept asking me the same question that I felt like I kept answering in a way that he should understand. So
I don't think that Donnie understands how to construct a phylogenetic tree. I was just like at all.
I was hesitating because I was, like, trying to figure out how to word this in a way that would have him understand what I was saying if he had not understood what I was saying previously. Like, I just couldn't understand what he was not getting.
And you know what? I think in that situation, that's another situation where turning it around and asking him questions is going to get you to that answer a lot more quickly, because then you're not flailing around trying to give him the information that he wants. You can say, like, what is it? Okay, look, do you understand this? And, you know, and then you can build from the bottom if you get in that kind of a situation, right? Where you can say, like, okay, clearly there's a disconnect. I don't understand what it is that you are missing here, right? And so I need you to tell me.
I think that it definitely would have benefited the conversation to have taken a step back and say, okay, what is the source of, like, what you're not getting here? So like how can we remedy and move forward past this beyond just me trying to figure out a new way to repeat myself for the 30th time, but using different phrasing
Mhm.
in a hopes that it will stick. So
Yeah. Because I mean, you're kind of you like I think at that time, in your debate career, like and I know you love science so much that like it's like I want to tell you, I want to teach you, I want you to know these things. And so, it becomes a situation where you very easily get into sort of like that lecture sort of mode.
yes.
And I think when you're debating a bad faith actor, you have to resist that urge, and you have to
Yeah.
slow down, and you have to remember that they may, like, a couple of things could be going on, right? One is that they do understand and they're deliberately misunderstanding you. And so you're not looking to get their understanding, you're looking to get their like agreement, right? And then the second is that it may be that they genuinely don't understand you, but they also are not working very hard to,
Yeah, they're not
try and
trying
bridge that. They're not trying, they're not helping you bridge that gap, right? So you have to go over onto their side and drag them, right? And sort of force them to acknowledge the obvious and build it that way, right?
Mhm.
Like a lawyer does. And that's why I think that this style is appropriate in these situations.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
do kind
basically
of
what I got.
because I do love science education and science communication a lot. I do try to educate my opponents probably too much, especially when they're coming to score rhetorical points instead of actually learn something or come to the truth of what the empirical facts show. So that's a good
Yeah,
point.
and
Point.
you know what? Like the way that you do it often is effective, right? And so like don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, I've seen on many an occasion where somebody says something, dumb, and you're just like, no, that's not the case. And let me tell you the way it is. And then you just rattle off a bunch of science and they're like, well, no, and like, and it's very effective. And very often that's the case, right? So like, like I've said before, like this is sort of an extra tool. It's not like I'm trying to replace your toolkit. I'm just giving you a screwdriver. You keep your hammer, you
No,
keep your
I know,
wrench.
I know. I appreciate it though too because
Yeah.
it's not like I could always learn new things and pick up more
Yeah.
tools for my toolkit. So let's not end it on that one. Let's do one more clip here where maybe I don't flounder as much in my explanations,
All
unless we
right.
just
All right.
have a conclusion for this debate because
All
that
right.
was like I just throw my hands up. I'm like I'm so exhausted. It's 4
Do
a.m.
you,
I'm so done with this.
do you want to do the conclusion, or do you want me to jump back to a place where you're strong?
I'll let you decide, honestly. I think
Let's
the
end on a
conclusion is
strong
kind of
note. Let's end on a strong note.
cool.
Um, hang on a sec. Let me just find a good one here.
Because, yeah, I'll just explain while you're looking for that. At the end of this, Donnie was like, he went through like a 6 minute conclusion. It's past 4 a.m. I'm literally like closing my eyes as he's giving his conclusion. And then after like 6 minutes of listening to him deliver this monologue, he's like, okay, Grayson, now I'll pass it over to you for your concluding remarks. And at this point, I'm so beyond frustrated. We didn't get to talk about pretty much anything that I wanted to talk to. We didn't get to the heart of the issue or really have a fruitful conversation at all. And I just felt like I had wasted my entire night. And I just threw up my hands up. No, I'm done. I want to go to bed. I don't want to give a conclusion. I just want to hang up and go to sleep. So I just phoned it in. I had lost all steam at the end of it. So that was primarily why I ended this debate with such a bad taste in my mouth and why I was just not very proud of this debate. So I'm happy that maybe we could hopefully find a stronger clip here at the end. That would be maybe
Sure.
it would leave me with a much better taste in my mouth than from the original debate. So
Well, now you're giving me a lot of pressure. Now I'm second guessing like which clips I had. Because look, I didn't pick strongest moments to write down to talk about with you.
that's totally okay. We can pick whatever, man. I'm not. I
All
don't
right, all right. Now I'm second guessing myself. You know what? I think we may have covered this one already, but you know what? If we do, then we're just gonna play it again because like because that's what's going to happen. Because it's my channel. I do whatever I want. All right, let's do this. Let's go back just a touch there. There we go. All right, let's check this sucker out.
Why would that be the case?
Well, firstly, being environmentally related, I've got papers here showing that environments can result in a faster mutation rate, and Africans are historically where? Closer to the equator?
No.
But you also say Neanderthals have a higher mutation.
No, we talked about that one. Hang on, I got a better one. Don't worry. That's the beauty of doing this not live. We can edit that.
What I'm saying. The fact that the origin of humanity could be in the Middle East, based on the fact that genetic diversity goes down as you go west in Africa and as you go southward in Africa. The fact that Africans have more working PRDM9 sites, which is a fact. They have there's variable mutation rates, higher mutation rates in specific regions in African genes.
Source.
Okay.
You're only talking about the HBB gene. You're talking about one gene. You're not talking about genome wide.
Listen, are you saying that because there's one gene that experiences hypermutation, are you going to go on record and say that's the only gene that experiences hypermutation?
I'm going to say that the mutation rates of the African genome
you asked for the source.
Elevated.
We also found that the overall point mutation rate is significantly higher in Africans than in Europeans in the HBB region study. Is it your position that the HBB region is the only part of the genome in Africans that is subject to higher mutations? Is that your position?
No, that's a stupid, slippery little question, Mr. Dodgeball Donnie. No.
Well, hey, listen, again, Grayson. You not understanding why you're being refuted tonight is a you problem and not a me problem. Okay.
Yeah, you haven't refuted anything I've said.
Okay. Firstly,
name one thing I've said that you've refuted. Name one.
Are you going to go on record right now and say that genetic diversity does not go down as you go west in Africa and as you go southward in Africa? Are you going on record and saying that point there is false?
All right, there we go. Now, I'm gonna let you just pretend that you have the next thing to say and give the zinger that you want to give to close this one out.
All right. Well, that was pretty funny. You could tell that I was getting frustrated there and was just sort of.
I thought you handled yourself pretty well in that one. You're like, well, no, I'm not going to say that because that would be dumb, right? Like, no, I'm not saying it's the only one. I'm saying overall, there's not much, and that it kind of balances out, and you pick one of the high ones. Is it the only one? I doubt it. Is it one of the only ones? You betcha.
And what was really funny was that even on that slide that he was showing, they even said that this is way more than the genome wide rate. And then as soon as I think he read that, he switched off that slide really quick. It was pretty funny. Like, it's so funny seeing him shuffle around his slides while we're trying to talk. And I think
this last clip is indicative of the fact that I really did pick out the weakest moments in your weakest performance to talk about. Overall, it was very strong.
Yeah, I mean, literally just the fact that not only does genetic diversity decrease with distance from sub-Saharan Africa. Just the farther you are away from sub-Saharan Africa, the less genetic diversity there are. There's a number of different factors that decrease with distance. It's just so funny that anybody would even try to make these arguments. And
my favorite, the thing I was screaming at the computer when I watched this was, he's like, are you telling me that genetic diversity doesn't go down when you go west, when you go west from from East Africa, or that it doesn't decrease when you go south from East Africa? And I was going, and what about north?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Wait, what's north of East Africa?
Yeah, Northeast Africa, where he was saying was the highest.
Northeast Africa. Oh, it's lower there. What's north of that?
The Middle East, that's where he said it's all supposed to be the highest. Yeah.
So it's lower. We're there. We got there, boys.
And it's like,
Made it.
it's almost like Donnie knew how weak those arguments were, and that's
Yeah.
why he wanted to focus this conversation on a different topic. Like he wanted to talk about genetic bottlenecks, which again is not even an area of weakness. It just doesn't have to do with out of Africa. Like the genetic bottleneck that the human species went through was for all of Homo sapiens. Out of Africa is for non-Africans. Like it does, like the bottleneck that is experienced by the founder effect of leaving Africa does not affect people in Africa. So like literally these are two completely different effects. It still frustrates me. I don't know if you could but
I
I'm
can tell.
still
But
frustrated.
you know, like,
I've told Donnie, dude, we need to have an actual debate on out of Africa because I was robbed of this opportunity, and yeah, that's probably never gonna happen. Honestly, I don't think he's interested in actually talking about that subject for some reason. Who's to say?
Well, he said that he'll debate me on it sometime. I'll probably just. I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to like get on his back right now because I don't know
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
noticed he's just experienced a tragedy, and we got to have some empathy for the guy. I mean, even though he was an opponent here, like, you know, Donnie, our thoughts are with you, and you know, we hope that you're taking care of yourself, and you know, we have respect for you. We think you're a good debater. We think you're a good guy, and we hope that that you and your family are all right. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
definitely take some time, you
yeah,
know, gather yourself, get back to it on your own time when he's ready for the debatosphere,
yeah,
I guess. But for
100%.
sure.
But
I
yeah,
I don't know. I've definitely, you know, I don't even know where I was going with that, to be honest. I'm just ready to have another debate again. I've had such a dearth of debates recently that I'm like itching to get back into the ring, and I cannot find an opponent. So it's
well, I'll fight you. You know, pick something.
what would we debate about, Mr. Anderson? I
Well,
mean,
look, I can be a contrarian. You know, we'll find something. We'll find something. We'll have to have a good row just to keep it, just to, you know, I'll take a
that would be
creationist
fun.
position or something. It'll be great.
That would be fun. I would want it to be something though that we need to find an actual point of disagreement because I don't want you to just be pretending to be a creationist for this debate. It's not
Yeah,
that
that's
takes
fair.
away
That's
the
fair.
fun
We'll
from it.
find something. We'll find something.
Like yeah, I
But
don't know how you feel about pineapple on pizza, but
I'm a fan. So
dang, me too. Okay, we got to find
yeah, you know,
something to do with here. I'm just trying to go for controversial subjects first of all, but we'll find something.
we'll
We will
find
find
something.
something, and we will have a debate. Just because like it's been like over a month, I think, since I've had a debate,
Oh,
and like people keep scheduling one for me and then backing out or going non-responsive at the last minute. I've been having horrible luck finding debate partners, so yeah, it'll happen soon. I'm itching to get back into the ring because, like I
it'll
said,
happen for you.
I love it. It's a skill I like. I enjoy working on, and I have fun doing it. So yeah, if anybody of in your audience is wanting some more debate content against pseudoscientists like Dodgeball Donnie here tonight, creationists, flat earthers, climate change denialists, and anyone pushing pseudoscience, that's generally what I've devoted my channel to. So based theory on YouTube. Check it out.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here, Grayson, and thanks to everybody for watching. And we'll see you next time.